Dr. Cam
Mr.
Calder.
Speaker, a huge pleasure to get up and take a call on the Prime Minister's statement. I can't believe the previous Speaker, who's normally a man of some rectitude, has been known to contribute on the parliamentary rugby teams on the field there, talking about power bills. Mr. Farfai, power bills went up 77% under your watch. 77%. The people in your electorate will just be giving thanks that there's a fine national government there who are taking control of this situation, which is out of control under your watch. They probably enjoy having you there briefly on time to time, visiting them, but on these matters of power bills, Mr. Farfai, they are very happy that there is a National League government. This is a National League government that is producing results. Results for our most vulnerable, results for our newborn, results for our young people, results for our families, results for our seniors, results for Maori, Pacifica and our recent immigrants. Mr. Speaker, results for all New Zealanders. I'll come back to this, Mr. Speaker, in more detail because the Prime Minister's statement reflects our deep understanding of the global financial situation and our success in navigating our way through it. It's a statement that reflects our steadfast resolve to cushion the most vulnerable from the worst edges of the recession, and an appreciation that we, as a nation, we have to work together smarter and formulate intelligent and innovative policies to facilitate this. This is a government that respects New Zealanders. What a contrast to the recent announcement from the third Labour leader in 3 years, David Cunliffe. The announcement of a scheme to pay virtually any fertile New Zealand family who have a child money to do so. A poorly targeted spray of dollars, loopy largesse, unfocused, loose thinking, giving money to thousands of high-income families who have no need of it. How would this be paid for? And here the Prime Minister has pointed out the third Labour leader in 3 years has been very tricky. Has Mr. Cunliffe been cunning? He perhaps thought he had been. Who doesn't like being given money? But New Zealand voters are more insightful than that. Had Mr. Cunliffe been conning the electorate with his explanation of how this cadeau would be paid for? Cancelling policies which aren't in force saves nothing. Has he been conning the electorate? Many believe he has. Labour is living in an economic Middle Earth, and the voters of New Zealand are underwhelmed and cynical at an opening salvo in the 2014 campaign, which portrays the author as both disingenuous David and devious David. Instead of a best start, it's a stuttering misfire, Mr. Speaker, that underlines the fact that Labour has learned nothing in all its last 5 years in opposition, nothing, nada, nil, and has disregarded the global financial crisis completely. They're firmly stuck in the same old mindset of tax more, spend more and hope. The 2014 parliamentary year is just a few weeks old, and already the Labour opposition are promising $750 million in more spending. $750 million, $750 million, and money they don't have, they have no idea where they are going to get it from. This speech by the third Labour leader was an opening pirouette in a dance of the desperate. Only early February in election year, and Labour's already promising $750 million in the hope of buying voter support. But he wasn't done there. He wasn't done there. The very next day, he complained that the majority of New Zealand meat exports were frozen carcasses. Wrong. The fact is, well over 90% of our meat products are cut and prepared in New Zealand before export. And anyone who's been overseas and seen our meat products on display will know how well we do. How well they do and how well extremely presented they are. Where else has the Labour Party been wrong, I hear you ask? Labour would have us believe that income inequality in New Zealand is getting worse. Wrong, wrong, wrong. The figures of long-term MSD research statistician Brian Perry are clear that over the last 10 years or so, the numbers have barely changed. And interestingly, Australia is less equal than New Zealand. Labour would have you believe that the wage gap between Australia and New Zealand is widening. Wrong, wrong, and wrong again. The fact is, in real after-tax terms, under this national-led government, the gap between wages in Australia and New Zealand is narrowing. Labour constantly complain and claim that more and more New Zealanders are going to live in Australia. Wrong, wrong, wrong. We've got the Ministry of Immigration saying it's definitely wrong, right in front of us here. And the fact is, according to Statistics New Zealand, the number of New Zealanders moving to Australia has steadily been falling since December 2012. Labor would have you believe that National ignores older people. Wrong, wrong, wrong. The fact is, under the national superannuation for a married couple has increased by well over 25% since 2008. 25% since 2008, far more than compensating for the increase in prices from inflation over the same period. There have been well over 40,000 more elective surgeries, improving the quality of life for over 65-year-olds. Our older people are doing better under National. So far, the third Labor leader in 3 years has been caught out in a web of inaccuracy, a slew of untruths and a comedy of errors. You can understand why their caucus is so ambivalent about supporting him. You know, if this is the best start possible, it's going to be a long slide to virtual irrelevancy by the time the election comes around. And that's just the leader, devious David Cunliffe. What other innovative ideas has the Labor Party developed as they enter their 6th year in opposition? How many ideas? Well, actually, not many. Not many. Their spokesman for Revenue, Dr David Clark, normally a man of sober thought and mien, obviously gave the matter a little bit of thought only, or possibly was texting Kim Il-sung of South Korea for inspiration, because Dr Clark has been on the record as proposing to ban multinational of North Korea, multinational corporations like Facebook from the internet. Closing down Facebook is a certainty a left-field suggestion, even from a party of the left, and certainly seemed to take his caucus colleagues by surprise. So Labor, in their first days back after the rejuvenating summer break, have proved themselves bereft of new ideas, instead serving up ill-conceived, poorly costed, ill-directed middle-class welfare and plainly risible fantasy. And that's just Labor. The prospect of a Labor-Green coalition would pose a very real, clear and present danger, Mr Speaker. The Labor Greens have left the economy of Australia a virtual train wreck. After years of Labor Green misgovernment there, Australia is facing huge deficits and rising unemployment. Globally, the recovery from the worst recession in decades is still very recessional. I heard my erstwhile colleague here, Mr Honourable Maurice Richardson, point out himself. The Greens would have a more dominant role in New Zealand, Labor Party in New Zealand, than they did in Australia, and they are philosophically opposed to farming, to manufacturing, exploitation of oil and mineral resources, major underpinnings of our economy. Mr Speaker, this is a government of fresh ideas, willing, ready and able to provide principled and pragmatic leadership for New Zealand so all can share in a brighter future and seize the growing opportunity our burgeoning economy provides.
Honourable Ruth Dyson.
Mr.